What if I told you that the last true Viking king did not die quietly in his bed? He died with a sword in his hand, an arrow in his throat, and a dream of conquering England burning in his eyes. This is the story of Harald Hardrada, the warrior who fought from the frozen forests of Scandinavia to the golden domes of Byzantium, the exile who became a mercenary, the mercenary who became a king, and the king whose death would mark the end of the Viking Age. The boy who watched a kingdom fall, 1030. Harald was born in 1015 in Ringerike, Norway, into a world ruled by iron, blood, and ambition. He was the half-brother of Olaf II of Norway, the fierce Christian king who tried to unite Norway under one crown. But unity came at a price. Norway's powerful chieftains rebelled. Denmark's mighty ruler, Canute the Great, cast his shadow over Scandinavia. In 1030, at the Battle of Stiklestad, 15-year-old Harald stood beside his brother as Norway burned with civil war. The clash was brutal. Axes split shields, spears pierced mail. The earth turned red. Olaf fell. Harald was wounded, cut, beaten, nearly dead, but he survived. And that survival would change history. With Norway lost and enemies hunting him, the teenage prince fled east. He crossed forests, rivers, and hostile lands until he reached the rising power of Kievan Rus. Exile in the east, 1031 to 1034. In Novgorod, Harald found refuge under Prince Yaroslav the Wise. Here, the young Viking warrior learned patience, strategy, diplomacy. But exile is a fire that either destroys you or hardens you. Harald was not meant to be a court ornament. He was meant for war. And so he left again, this time for the richest city in the world, Constantinople. The Golden City and the Varangian Guard, 1034 to 1042. In 1034, Harald arrived in Constantinople, capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city of towering walls, glittering churches, and unimaginable wealth. He joined the legendary Varangian Guard, an elite unit composed largely of Scandinavian warriors. They were the emperor's personal bodyguards. They swore loyalty not to the land, but to the throne. Harald rose quickly. Under Emperor Michael IV the Paphlagonian, he fought in Sicily against Arab forces. He battled pirates in the Mediterranean. He crushed rebellions in Bulgaria under Peter Delian around 1041. Saga sources claim he fought in as many as 18 battles. Gold poured into his coffers, silver stacked high. He became wealthy beyond imagination. But wealth was never enough. He wanted a throne. Imprisonment and escape, 1042. Power in Constantinople was treacherous. When Emperor Michael IV died in 1041, political chaos followed. His successor, Michael V, was overthrown. Intrigue filled the palace. Harald was imprisoned, perhaps accused of embezzlement, perhaps simply caught in the political storm. The sagas claim he escaped dramatically, possibly even blinding his enemies before fleeing. Whether legend or truth, one fact is certain. By 1042, Harald had left Byzantium, rich, battle-hardened, and more ambitious than ever. He returned to Kievan Rus, married Yaroslav's daughter Elizabeth, and prepared for what he believed was his destiny, the throne of Norway. The return to Norway, 1045 to 1047. Norway was no longer under Danish control. Harald's nephew, Magnus the Good, ruled both Norway and Denmark. Harald came not as a beggar. He came with gold, with reputation, with the aura of a living legend. In 1045, Harald forced Magnus into a power-sharing agreement, 2 kings, one uneasy kingdom. But fate intervened. In 1047, Magnus died, leaving Harald as sole king of Norway. The exile had returned. The mercenary had become king. But Harald Hardrada, hard ruler, was not satisfied with one crown. War against Denmark, 1048 to 1064. Harald turned his eyes toward Denmark, claiming it as his rightful inheritance. For nearly 15 years, he raided and fought against Danish king Svein II of Denmark. Cities burned, fleets clashed across the North Sea. In 1062, at the naval battle of Nassau, Harald nearly destroyed Svein's forces. The sea was filled with broken ships and bodies. Yet Denmark did not fall. By 1064, weary of endless war, Harald made peace, but he still hungered for greatness. And then, across the sea, opportunity appeared. England in 1066. England in 1066 was unstable. King Edward the Confessor died in January without an heir. The powerful Earl Harold Godwinson claimed the throne. But another man believed the crown was his, William the Conqueror. And far in Norway, Harald Hardrada also believed he had a legitimate claim, based on earlier agreements between Scandinavian kings. One kingdom, 3 claimants, and destiny waiting in blood. In September 1066, Harald sailed from Norway with around 300 ships and perhaps 10,000 men. He was 51 years old, an age when most warriors retired, but Harald was not most warriors. The invasion of England. Harald landed in northern England, joined by the exiled English noble Tostig Godwinson, brother of King Harold. On September 20th, 1066, at the Battle of Fulford, Harald defeated the northern English earls Edwin and Morcar. Victory. York prepared to surrender. It seemed as though fate favored the Viking king. But fate is cruel. King Harold Godwinson marched his army 185 miles in just 4 days, an astonishing forced march from southern England. On September 25th, 1066, at Stamford Bridge, everything changed. The Last Stand, Battle of Stamford Bridge, 1066. Harald's army was caught off guard. Many Vikings had left their armor behind in the heat. The English army struck with fury. A lone Viking warrior reportedly held Stamford Bridge alone, cutting down enemies until he was killed from below by a spear thrust. Then the full battle erupted. Harald fought in the front ranks. He wore a blue tunic. He carried his great 2-handed sword. He advanced like a storm, until an arrow pierced his throat. The last great Viking king fell on English soil. His army collapsed. Tostig was killed. Of 300 ships, only about 24 returned to Norway. And just weeks later, Harold Godwinson himself would fall to William the Conqueror at the Battle of Hastings. But many historians mark Stamford Bridge, Harald Hardrada's death, as the true end of the Viking Age. Why Harald Hardrada matters. Harald was not just a warrior. He was a survivor of Stiklestad in 1030, a commander in the Byzantine Empire from 1034 to 1042, King of Norway from 1047 to 1066, a challenger for the English throne in 1066. His life connected 3 worlds: Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, and Byzantium. He was a bridge between the old Viking raiders and the emerging medieval monarchies of Europe. He ruled harshly but strengthened Norway's central authority. He promoted Christianity while maintaining warrior traditions. He embodied the Viking spirit, fearless, restless, ambitious. But ambition is a blade that cuts both ways. The legacy. When Harald Hardrada died in 1066, the Viking Age ended. No more great Viking invasions would threaten England. Scandinavia would move toward stable kingdoms, trade, and diplomacy. But the legend of Harald remained, preserved in sagas like Heimskringla. A king who fought in 2 continents, a mercenary who guarded emperors, a warrior who died as he lived, advancing. Imagine the final moment, the noise of battle, the roar of steel, the wind over the bridge, an arrow flying. A lifetime of conquest ending in a heartbeat. Harald Hardrada did not fade into history. He crashed into it. And with his fall, an era ended. The last great Viking king had fallen, but his legend never would.